Nowadays, everybody got a Hadoop cluster, right? It's just like this highway. It's an infrastructure, and everybody needs it. But then see what's happening. A lot of things on this road, people are in the queue, and they need to wait a long time to get what they want. They need a new technology and new solution, which is hydrogen. Now you can fly. You can actually cross all these roads and go somewhere much faster. That's one thing that hydrogen do to accelerate all your data analytics. And the good thing is you can see the whole picture. You're on top of everything. You can easily get access to all your data assets. At the same time, if you want to go deeper, get all the details, you can still do that. Intelligence can help you do a lot of tricks, such like this. Make it very agile. And also, we allow you to make phone calls and open your window if you want. It's all much better than commercial airline, right?
All right, so that's my presentation. Just kidding. We do have some more information to share. So here, let me start the presentation. All right, let me hide this to somewhere. And I'm Daniel Gu, Senior Director of Solutions at Kyligence. I'm very happy to be back here because I spent almost 10 years working for eBay and PayPal. And we have our first meetup here also for a reason, because eBay started Apache Kylin, and still the one of the biggest committers to this open source software, had a lot of contributions. And it's a very proud thing to still come back here to our root to do the first meetup about Apache Kylin. And as I showed in the video, nowadays everybody got a Hadoop cluster, right? Hadoop clusters make something previously not possible now possible, because you now can have huge amount of data stored in the whole system. You can have variety of different kinds of data, structured, unstructured, and you can do a lot more to process it. But at the same time, it's not really designed for interactive kind of queries, not like your traditional RDBMS kind of data warehouse that you were used to, right? And the query has long time to get the result back, or you need to even write some program to process the data, get the result back. For the business users, they need to file a ticket or ask somebody else with some technical expertise to really write that thing and get the result back. So it becomes more like a longer chain, and the feedback loop is also very long, and it delays the decision making of all this business. And another thing is low concurrency. I think a lot of people probably have the experience that some very bad query on Hive can just consume all the system resources and break everything. It's just like some big truck failed in the middle of the road. Everybody got blocked, no matter how good that road is, right? And finally, is the high technical threshold. As I said, you need programmer to help you to write maybe Scala or something else. Nowadays, of course, people all try to still provide SQL interface, but a lot of them has some limitations. It cannot be really a full-blown kind of SQL support. So a lot of issues here. That's why Kyligence, or Apache Kylin was created to address such a real pain point with big data. Big data is good, but at the same time, it needs a lot more to make it really useful, to really generate value out of those big data you accumulate. And a lot of times now, the problem is that you have your traditional data warehouse. Still, some people prefer to use SQL to interact with those things. And now you have a new data lake. And some people might even ask you to generate some data from the data lake and then reload back to your RDBMS. Or in the RDBMS, there's some data that people need to join in their Hive, so they get the data out and put into Hive to join them together. A lot of this kind of back and forth, right? And then on the BI side or the application side, you need to write a lot of code and interact with them differently. Maybe nowadays you also have an Elasticsearch cluster, and then you need Kibana to interact with it. All these different things. So it becomes a spaghetti between these two. That's why Apache Kylin become a middle layer, just like the middleware previously. Now it just try to hide those complexity so that you can just have one middle layer and then aggregate a lot of data into it. And then user can just use ANSI SQL, some very easy connectors to connect with this data, get sub-second query performance, and easily support thousands of users to interact with this huge amount of data. That's the value Apache Kylin provides. And that's why it distinguishes itself from a lot of other technologies. So here is where Apache Kylin fits in. You already know how it works, right? Branky already gave you a pretty deep dive. And here in this whole architecture, you can see that Kylin sits in the middle. On your left side, that's all the data sources. And then it can consume either Hive and Kafka for the open source Kylin. And then it pre-computes and materialize that kind of view, right, into data cubes. It needs to have some storage. But with that, it supports all these BI tools to easily get the data out of it. And the cubing side at the bottom, that's how it generates its code. It doesn't require you to write any code anymore. It will generate the code for you and will dispatch MapReduce or Spark jobs. And in the new 2.5 version, it already go all Spark, and the cubing size cut in half or even less than before. So a lot of good things in Apache Kylin and a lot more adoption now. And here you can see Apache Kylin and SQL on Hadoop kind of process, how they perform. On the left side, this chart, you probably even cannot see those green bars. The green ones, that's Kylin's performance, Kylin's response time in sub-seconds. And then for SQL on Hadoop, those Hive kind of queries is much longer. And the worst thing is that for all this kind of process, if a lot of people repeatedly run similar queries, they each time consume a lot of Hadoop resource. But if you pre-compute, pre-aggregate, and put into its own storage in data cubes, it's already much smaller and much faster. And when people hit it, Hadoop itself doesn't need to be hit, and there's no resource consumption anymore. Considering if you have thousands of users or even more and keep running same or similar kind of queries, how much you can save the system resource, right? And on the right side, you can see Kylin performed quite constantly with its response time, along with the growth of the data volume, while SQL and Hadoop probably will grow linearly or even exponentially with the growth of the data size. So this is all actual kind of performance testing, and you can see Apache Kylin, how it can really helps in accelerating your queries. And nowadays, there's also a lot of other trend to resolve the problem that I mentioned. You have multiple data sources, you don't want to move data back and forth. A lot of times, query are very slow. And there are other kind of either open source or proprietary kind of software that do either so-called data virtualization, that they just load the metadata and just dispatch your query to somewhere else and get the result back, and maybe join another time into another layer and then join them, so that you don't need to know the detail of all the backend, how many data stores you have. But you can see all these kind of solutions all in memory, right? Of course, in memory is much faster, but finally, there are basic laws of math and physics. You cannot just keep accelerating all those things with this kind of technology or mechanism. They perform very well in smaller scale of data, but once the data really grows to some extent, Kylin would be a much better solution, because it will just grow linearly with the data source while keep the performance constant. So for Kylin, we have a very active user and developer community, but we welcome more committers, more people to start to use it, to try it, and to contribute to this community. And it's keep releasing new versions. And for Kyligence, we also have a dedicated team to contribute back to the open source community. And eBay is also a very big committer, and they develop things like the cube cleaner, or to make cube smaller, this kind of very good functions. So there are several use cases of open source Kylin. Across the globe, there are a lot of people are using open source to support their data or data applications. Recently in Strata in New York, we happened to talk to Hulu. I think a lot of people knows about that company, and they were like, yeah, we're also using Kylin, and we have petabytes of data supported by it. And here you can also see other big companies, some of them from China. Based on their big population, their big data is really, really big, right? A lot of users are generating a lot of data. ByteDance is the leading or top one newsfeed app in that market, and has a lot of users, and the users are actually user base is more like the US population. And their data size is trillion rows, and every day 100 billion rows added into this huge data set. And they use Apache Kylin to do their analysis, and to reduce their analysis to like sub-seconds, to support thousands of internal users. And they build over 100 different cubes for different products, product lines, different things, right? So it really support their business, support their decision making. The second one is Yahoo Japan. As you probably also know, Yahoo Japan also runs their own auction site. And their auction site also has something more like a My eBay seller dashboard. And that dashboard previously would take over a minute to load. Now with Kylin to become the pre-aggregation of all the sellers' performance, their page can be loaded within a second. And considering this actually is supporting their mission critical website features, I think that's also very important for every data team, every data engineers, all the members of data platform, all these kind of teams. I've been working in that kind of team for over 15 years. And normally you are a back office, right? You're a cost center. You spend a lot of money to build the cluster and stuff. And you're probably not always the top priority when invest in IT, because there's website that needs to be run. There's some value generating kind of functions that we need to work on. But at the same time, if data, everybody said data is an asset, right? We really need to rely on data, need to be data driven. Then your data product needs to be really embed into mission critical applications into your core business. That's how you become also a revenue generating kind of department instead of a cost center. And that's how the team can really shine and hire more people and get more cluster. The next one is a top one auto company in China, and you can see some big numbers. They have a lot of cubes built and support 500,000 queries each day. You can see half of their queries can be sub-second response time, which is pretty amazing. And for their 99, it's also very tolerable within 15 seconds. Right? All right. So what is Kyligence and why we are here? Because it's an open source meetup, right? But Kyligence is powered by Kylin, and I'd like to quote Mac Whitman when he was in China. He said, "Free is not a business model." And for open source to really thrive, for open source to really get the momentum, get the attention, get what it needed, get the team dedicated to work on it, you need to provide business value. And we're here to provide another option for some of the users, the potential users. They can definitely benefit from this technology, but at the same time, they're not as big, as great as eBay, who has a lot of talent to use the open source version, to customize it. They need someone to help them. And that's where we sit. We are funded by the creators of Apache Kylin, and we focus on providing a total solution. It becomes more like a logical data warehouse for some of those users that they want. And we now have dual headquarters. We have over 100 people in China and some people here in Silicon Valley, and we're growing. We already have people in Seattle and New York. And we're selected by CRN as top 10 big data startups of this year. So if we look back, when I joined eBay in 2004, I think that data warehouse on Teradata got maybe 10 terabytes of data, and later on to grow to 30. And it was huge at that moment. And now it's just nothing, right? At the beginning, you have this traditional data warehouse, or even before that, before my time, that's the data marts. And then we have Hadoop. We got data lakes. We have newer technology, all these fancy new clusters, collect more data, while most of the companies still maintain some kind of RDBMS-based solutions for some of the use cases to supplement each other. And then we have cloud, and people move their data onto cloud to EMR and other kind of technologies. But what Kyligence wants to do is to sit on top of that and provide a so-called fusional and intelligent data platform for everybody, so that you can still have all these data assets, but it can be, all this complexity can be hidden behind one single point of entry. But how do we do that? You can see here, we sit in the middle is the analytic platform, and you have all your data assets still like Hive, RDBMS on the left side, right? You still have all those. Now you can connect those to our platform, while at the same time, Apache Kylin plays a key role in generating cube and table indexes from those Hive, RDBMS, and other data sources. And now all the users' experience can be streamlined. a lot of times people first do a high level, whole picture, just like you're up there in the air, a high level kind of view. And then you keep slice and dice, finding problems and get the outliers out and identify where's the problem. And then you probably need to dig deeper into individual records, like some credit card transactions, that's fraud. You need to still see the not aggregated detail, and that's the table index, and that can still return in seconds within a huge amount of data, right? And for some of those ad hoc queries that we cannot expect or pre-compute, you can still go through Kyligence, and it will reroute all these queries back to your Hive and RDBMS. So the interface is still just one thing, while you can get all the different results. And you don't need to care, oh, this query hits the cube, another query hit back to the Hive. They are all the same to your end users. But of course, some of the queries will be limited by the performance of your original data storage, Hive, or whatever. But at least you have one single entry and one unified view and semantic layer to use. And for our enterprise version, we can consume all your query patterns, query logs, and have a so-called AI-augmented machine learning tool to figure out what kind of cube you need to build, and then accelerate that intelligently. That reduces the human effort. You don't need a data modeler there to say what kind of model to build. It can just need to be reviewed. And later on, our newer version will just do it transparently. You don't need to even care about that. And your query will just mysteriously get faster. And to answer some of the online questions, for Kyligence, unlike open source version, it can run on all kinds of cloud solutions, and it has much more connectors, the commercial connectors to all these commercial tools like Tableau, Qlik, Power BI. Recently, Power BI released a bunch of so-called certified connector to all these different data sources. And the first launch, they already put Kyligence as one of the connector as an endorsement to the data source to this technology. And finally, I want to mention what some analysts from Gartner in recent their conference, their recommendation. This guy, actually a lady, created the Magic Quadrant that everybody knows, right? Magic Quadrant for analytics and BI. One of the recommendations is to consider the best breed tool portfolio strategy instead of stick to just one vendor. Maybe one vendor provide end-to-end solution for some size of the company, that's totally okay. Everything is workable. You can just use all kinds of different tools. We see some company have that strategy, like they can adopt MicroStrategy and then have a lot of different functions in it, and to do even data preparation, cubing, and finally the visualization. But for a big corporate, for enterprise, for some more advanced kind of analytics need, you probably need to consider to have several different components, each perform the best in their breed to finally construct your own solution. And I believe Apache Kylin and Kyligence is the best of the breed in our sector, and we'll be more than happy if you want to try Apache Kylin to already start to explore the capability of this technology. And with that, that's my presentation, and we have our contact here, and after the presentation or after the whole meetup, you can come talk to us, and we have some other data sheet to share also. Any questions? No? Yeah.
Regarding that slide, bring through. You actually get all the data from underlying RDBMS into the table index.
You mean this one, right?
Yeah.
It depends on your need. There's a balance. The balance is that all these table indexes and the things will consume some storage.
That's right. That's
yeah.
My question. You could actually have a pass-through query to like database.
Yeah. 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 It is maybe a 80-20 rule you need to balance there. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
My question is, it's interesting in trying to connect to different data sources like high version database.
Yeah.
So that, in your view, do you have any goal to kind of do the query at a regional layer or get data from the different data sources and try to join it? But
yeah.
That part is, I think, it's a little bit different from Kyligence.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Part of the plan.
Yes, that's the part of the plan. In our future versions, we have our more ambitious goal to become the logical data warehouse, become your data warehousing solutions. And then that means you need to connect to all these data sources and still do some cubing to accelerate or other kind of mechanism to accelerate your query, while at the same time, all this data, no matter from which data source, there can be another layer to join them together and then present you the results so that you don't need to care where the data is and there's no silo of the data. It's all just mixed together. Yeah.
The reason I'm asking is kind of for current version of Kylin is sort of, it's looking at more kind of repeating analytic data access needs. Kind of try to optimize for these scenarios.
Right.
For real ad hoc queries, I just want to try it. Right.
Yeah.
Just one time. But if you look at data exists, especially in data, it's different data storage, data sources. Yeah. But lack of a tool to kind of, I want to grab this piece of data, join with another piece of different.
Yeah. That's why data virtualization now becomes so hot, and there are companies just doing that without considering maybe they have some way to accelerate. But that's also what I try to mention, that you need to have best of the breed in all these kind of different things, and maybe we can connect with the metadata store so that this layer can already be there for you to use, and you don't need to care about how to really dispatch the queries. It will already handled by for you. Yeah. Yes. But at the same time, you don't want your query to just sit there for 1 hour and still no result. You don't know what's going on, or just out of memory and throw an error. So yeah, there's a lot of technical challenges to tackle. But I think that's the trend, because nowadays everybody got so many different clusters and different things, because there's no one solution that can fit all needs.
So I know you went through the slides for the Apache Kylin, and also the latest slides you used for Kyligence.
Yeah.
Just on top of the Apache Kylin, I mean, can you summarize in short, like what's exactly the unique value you want to deliver in the Kyligence?
I think Kylin addressed a lot of the pain points that I mentioned, but at the same time, the more enhanced commercial kind of version package everything together, so you don't need to care about a lot of details and setups, and it provides a lot more connectors to both ends, because it sits in the middle, right? It connects to more data sources, even cloud data sources, and on the other side, it connects to all these commercial data visualization tools. Those data visualization tools, they're maybe best of the breed in their side, and you need to support those, right? So those, we of course will welcome people to contribute more connectors to the Apache Kylin, but at this moment, the choices are much less.
Like, do you see any limitation in terms of like the definition of the cube and the way you are storing in HBase, or with respect to HBase, like at any scale you see, okay,
yeah,
might not scale. You need another cluster itself, and this HBase cluster won't work. And why do you need like say co-processor? Why it's being introduced, or why the cache layer is being added?
Yeah, I think in our next session from exactly, they actually have that comparison. For open source, we use HBase, and it does have its own issue, but because it's all open source, right? And people are still trying to maybe even replace that with a better storage. And on the Kyligence side, it actually uses its own proprietary storage.
Also,
yeah.
That layer 30% of cube is
Yeah.
the HBase?
It's not HBase anymore. HBase can still be an option, but the commercial version has its own proprietary storage format that's pure columnar and perform more consistently. Yeah.
And it is like it's based on some open source, or it's pure like
Yeah, it's our own storage, but you can consider it similar to Parquet. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I'll introduce our next one, and it actually is a very interesting topic because we also back and forth about how to present all the learnings. They just did a lot of evaluations of different technologies. A lot of people, when I did this kind of presentation, they always ask, how do you compare to this? How do you compare to that? Why not use Druid? And all these kind of questions. So this is from real experience and real comparison. So it's very interesting to take a look and listen to their presentation.